Okay, so welcome back to another installment of the budget build. Today we are in the excitement, we're moving on to the next phase. We've got an awning on the car, we've got some cool stuff we want to do today, and by the end of this episode we're going to have a Redarc BCDC 1225D installed. We're going to have a small pure sine wave inverter, a lithium battery 120 amp hour. We're going to have a solar panel on the roof rack, and this vehicle is going to be ready for a fridge, and it's going to be ready for an adventure. So please join us. First of all, the heart and soul of the DC to DC system that's going in here is the Redarc BCDC 1225D. Now this is going to be in control of the solar. It's going to be in control of the charging from the alternator, and you can see it's already been used because we've actually had this entire setup at Andy's house, and we actually temporarily did the install. He's been using this to get through load shedding. For those of you who aren't South African and don't have to experience load shedding, be grateful, but basically the government switches off our electricity for a couple hours at a time, and this means that Andy has at least been able to keep himself entertained, run his laptop and do a few small things. I know he's been running his biltong dryer so he can keep making biltong and Drovorce just off of this little pure sine wave inverter. So we've done a budget option here, but it is something that I said to Andy, let's not skimp on getting a quality battery. Let's not skimp on getting a quality DC to DC charger. These are the things that are important. Places where we can save a bit of money is in the inverter, and we can save on the solar. So we don't have a monocrystalline panel like I've got on my vehicle. This is just a normal polycrystalline, but it works just fine. We haven't gone for a big European or Aussie name brand inverter. We've gone for an off-the-shelf Chinese, but it's pure sine wave. It's not being used as a permanent inverter. It's switched on and off when necessary. Lithium, we've also saved some money here. We haven't gone for a first life lithium battery. We've gone for a second life lithium battery. So it's a little bit bigger and a bit heavier than a first life lithium battery, but it is almost half the price. So this still has a battery management app. So Andy can monitor his battery from his phone, see the inputs, outputs, set alarms, and do all of that stuff with the built-in management inside this battery, which is really, really cool. So this is actually very similar to my battery that I've got in my vehicle. This one has just got a built-in battery management system, and it has got slightly lower discharge rates and things like that. But this is going to work perfectly with the BCDC 1225D. What you do on here is, because this has no buttons or interface, this has got a few little LEDs which basically show you which charge profile you're using. So there's A, B, C, D and lithium, so I'm assuming it's going to be AGM, lead crystal, you know, stuff like that, and then it'll tell you where it's charging from. So it'll show you if it's charging from solar, vehicle, and then what stage of the charge is it in. Is it in the boost mode? Is it in float? Is it in, you know, just to let you understand how full the battery is and all of that stuff. So this is actually a very awesome product, and it's super tiny, first of all, but the construction of this is actually quite incredible. This thing is basically completely weather sealed. So what a lot of people do when they install these, they actually install them in the bonnet of the vehicle, right in the front of the vehicle, in the grille. So it gets good ventilation, so it stays cool, but this thing can handle water, it can handle mud and dust and dirt and everything, and it's super impressive. They've got now a new version, which is called the Core version, which I think doesn't have the same amount of weather sealing and is more for internal installations. In our case, we're going to be doing an internal installation. The way that you basically set your charge profile on here is these two cables. So as you can see here, we have them joined. This means that it is now a lithium charging profile. And depending on how you connect these up with the instructions in the manual will depend on which charge profile is selected. So we know that this has been working, it's been working really well, and it's been running this solar panel, charging this battery, and running this inverter purely off solar with no vehicle involved. And that's been running for like 4 or 5 months now, and it's been going perfectly. So now our goal is to transition all of these components into and onto the vehicle, and we can actually get this thing ready to rock and roll. So let's start by looking at the back of the vehicle and seeing where we're actually going to install this and what type of box are we going to make, because we're going to do a whole DIY thing built out of wood and everything, and it's going to go in the cab of Andy's vehicle. So let's get started. So this whole area in here is actually a really nice big space. We're going to basically build a battery box here that's going to house the battery, the charger and the inverter all in here. That'll come to whatever the height of the battery is. And then we're still going to have space for a 50-litre fridge in here, which is really going to be nice. So yeah, nice little advantage of having an extra cab is having just that little bit of room in the back here. Okay. So we've got to see how we're going to fit this on here, if we're going to do it lengthways or if we're going to do it like this. I think let's try and take up as little space as possible so we've got more room for the fridge. So we'll try and bring it up as close to the edge as possible, and then we'll basically build a little box up and over this and then down. So it'll house the inverter and we'll house our DC-DC in here as well, and we'll see just how we're going to do that. So we managed to get the structure of our box done yesterday, and today the weather is not really playing in our favor right now. It's a bit rainy and miserable, but we've got the awning out, and hopefully we can at least get a little bit of the wiring and stuff done today. I was hoping to be able to chase the cables through from the engine bay into the cab, but I think if I can get all of the wiring and stuff done on the BCDC, the inverter and all of that stuff, we can put the whole box and the whole frame in the vehicle, and then we can run the wires and do all the final connections while it's inside the vehicle. So anyways, I've got a few little tasks to do here, but really fun to be working on the Isuzu again. And we've managed to recycle a wooden box that I made for my Amarok like 6 years ago that's still been going good. So that's already like sanded and treated and everything. So I like the upcycling going on here. We've used a whole bunch of little scrap pieces of wood and stuff we found around the garage, and it's actually been really fun. So the rain beat us today. We've had to move into the garage to do some work. But when it comes to wiring up cables for an inverter, you need to make sure you use the right gauge cable. So even something as small as a 500 watt inverter, if you do the calculation at 12 volt, that's still drawing, I think, what, 40 amps? So it's still quite a lot of power that it can actually pull. So you've got to be still be kind of cautious about what cable thickness you use. So always just make sure you look and do a bit of research on what kind of gauge you need for your inverter. For example, the inverter in my bucket at the moment is 1000 watt, but that can surge up to 1800, and that gauge is basically, we use a really thick cable, like a 25 to 30 square cable, which I think is a gauge 4 on the AWG gauge scale. So it's quite a thick, chunky one. Here we can use an 8 or a 6. So that means we can go for a thinner, more flexible cable, but that is something to consider. And always keep the cables as short as possible between the battery and the inverter, and between the battery and your DC to DC charger. So we got lucky, and there's actually a 4 gauge cable running from the back of Andy's cab, where obviously the previous owner had a big subwoofer fit or something. So we're actually going to be able to use that cable to run power for our dual battery. So, and then what we'll do is we'll earth it that side. We won't run it earth because there's not very much, there's not a lot of space in the firewall to actually get through. There's only one hole, and this cable basically takes up that whole space. So we just reusing and recycling what we can. These cables can be quite expensive. It's not uncommon to spend a couple thousand rand just on cables for a dual battery system. This will then go into a 40 amp inline fuse, and that will basically protect the dual battery system from any sort of overload or short or anything if the cable gets damaged. So it should work quite nicely. So the rain stopped for a little bit. We have been working quite hard here. We've stripped and cleaned the entire interior of the vehicle. We have been searching for a hole to run the cables for the solar panel. We found that, we've cleaned up the area, we are now, actually the cable is run. We do just need to seal it up. There's a couple holes we found in this vehicle that we need to seal up with some silicone or something, because some Sikaflex, because yeah, if this car had to go through a water crossing, it would be a bit of a sieve, but we'll sort that out at some point. For now, we are going to actually get the solar panel on the roof rack and see what all that is going to require to fit. So hopefully, holding thumbs, that it's going to fit perfectly and we're not going to have to modify anything or do anything crazy. So let's see. So this is very much a scrounged together setup here, because we're taking a roof rack from a double cab Hilux and putting it on an extra cab Isuzu, so the dimensions aren't exactly right, it's not long enough. So our solar panel is overhanging a little bit on the front and the back, but it's not too bad. It does seem to line up exactly with the track on the extrusion on the roof rack and on the side of it, so we might be able to make this thing work. So we will luckily be able to get this to fit, and then obviously then there's still a whole length of the track here that we're going to try and keep for Andy to be able to pack stuff up here if he wants, whether maybe one day he wants to put a tent up here, or I don't know, whatever, bicycle, he can figure it out on his own. So what it does is it goes from the battery into the charger, and then from the charger into this battery. So what it does is the DC to DC, it takes higher and lower voltage, higher and lower current, and then kind of puts it, kind of down or boosts it so that it goes into the lithium battery at the correct amperage. So that's what a DC to DC does, whereas an old solenoid kit would just take whatever's coming from the front battery and dump it into the back battery, even if it's not ideal for the profile of the battery, so it doesn't have necessarily charging profiles. So it couldn't get it to completely full. Whereas this DC to DC will be able to get this battery to completely full, because it can send in just the right amount of current that the battery needs at that time for charging. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so our budget money saving cable is working well. Okie dokie, so we have been working on the Isuzu now for a good couple days. We've been doing some fiddly little things, getting some stuff sorted back here. We've got a new wooden box there in the front of the cab. We've got a fridge in, so we borrowed a fridge from our friend Hein, just so we can see for measurements and tie down points and everything, and it fits that little 55 Waco fridge perfectly, so that's excellent. We've got Andy's water tank secured now. We popped in at Bushtec. They helped us out with just a few little things here, so that's looking all good now. We've got new LED lights. These are actually magnetic, so I can actually pull this off here, and this thing is actually brilliant. So you've got a white light, you've got an amber light, and you've got a red light. And then, like, Bushtec have made these little plates that you can rivet everywhere around the canopy, and you can just take this and transfer it wherever you need it. So Andy's got 3 of those that he can use around the vehicle however he wants. So if he's inside the back here, he can move them around, magnetize it to the stainless table, or to other little magnetic strips we've put around the vehicle, and he can get lights inside his canopy very easily. So that's really cool. They're USB-C chargeable and stuff as well, so that's actually brilliant. So today our mission is we want to actually install a little USB distribution box in the back here. Yeah, then we're rocking and rolling. Then we are really good to go with this build, and we can look at heading out on an awesome trip. So let's see how today goes, what we end up getting done. But so far the BCDC 1225D has been working like an absolute charm. It's been charging from the car, it's been charging from solar, and it has been happily running the fridge there. So we are off to a really great start. We're cruising the Isuzu around plenty, and it has been driving like a dream. So we've definitely got some good positive energy here moving forward with the Isuzu. So we struggled to find a proper hole to get a cable into the actual tub. So we improvised and made a hole. You guys are probably going to watch this, the Isuzu people, and go, oh, but you should have just gone through here, there's a hole right there. Well, this tub is completely rubberized, like multiple times. And we know that because we've peeled away the rubberizing around here, and there's like 2 or 3 layers of rubberizing. But what we'll do is we'll run our cables. We've got a nice little grommet here. We'll use the protective sleeving around the cables, and then we will also Sikaflex up the hole so it doesn't leak dust or water or anything like that. So then we've got some nice power cables running into the tub for Andy, so he can run his CPAP machine, charge stuff, do whatever he needs to. We've got a little, we're going to run AC power, so we've got two 2-prongs, a 3-prong, and 2 USBs on here, so he can run everything he needs. And I think that's going to work quite nicely. He's got a really low consumption power setup. He's not running a whole bunch of weird things. He's just running a fridge and a few little things that he needs. He's got plenty of solar for his setup and a really nice big chunky battery to work from. So I think it's going to be perfect for him. We don't really need to worry about running DC outlets into the back of the cab, into the back of the canopy here. But if we can always add a couple cables to the setup and run it through the sleeving and stuff there. So, but yeah, so far so good. So we are all done and dusted now. It is now Thursday morning. We started on Sunday afternoon. It took us a good few days to get everything done, but it is what it is. And we worked flat out most days, which was quite a wild experience. But we managed to recycle a lot of wood from the garage. We managed to recycle a bunch of nice little things here and there. We yesterday actually just painted the whole baseboard just with a couple rattle cans that were left over of matte black, and it's actually really nice because it's made that base floor disappear a little bit. So the fridge sits on there nicely. We've got the little deck for Andy's dogs to be able to still sit even with the whole battery system and stuff happening underneath, so that they don't push anything by mistake or switch anything on and off or whatever. We've got the power on in the back now, so he can run his CPAP machine, he can charge his USB lights, he can do whatever, run his laptop, watch a movie in the back here. I gave him some of my old recovery tracks, which actually fit perfectly on the roof rack right next to the solar panel, so that's also really lucky. And yeah, it's moving along really nicely. I think the next things we can look at is kind of just making it a bit more homely inside the back of the canopy, so it's more camper ready. But we've already discussed a couple things. We've got some wood that we had bought which actually fits perfectly in the back here, which can be the base for Andy's kind of bed. And yeah, now it's time to actually just use everything. Use the ammo boxes and the water tanks, and you know, now you slowly start using stuff and going, oh, I wish I had a little bit of this, I wish I did, this is maybe too much, this is too little, I need another ammo box, I want a drawer. But I think we're going to manage to get away without any fancy drawer systems or anything like that, because they're really heavy and a waste of weight if you don't need it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what Andy can accomplish with this build with just a nice simple setup. Good quality canopy. We've been through some hectic rain and not a drop of water inside, so that's fantastic. And hopefully our new holes we've made are sealed all right and it won't contribute to any problems. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this awesome little video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that we're moving forward with the Isuzu with some positive energy. Anyways, we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.